Well,
how do books and media turn people on?
or off, whichever way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Depends on the message. And who receives the message, who needs the message, or who is beyond the message. Right? So there are a lot of messages that mean nothing to some. There are messages out there, books, and as you say, the media arts, that have a message which people need to follow, listen to, perceive, understand, maybe get away from once they see what it is. See? So it depends on the message value and who needs the message.
Wow. Good point. Good point. How come your first maybe visiting this planet has gotten so much acclaim over the last 25 or 30 years now?
I'm not sure it has reached any acclaim. I don't pay attention to that exactly. But if you say it does, I'm sure it deserves some acclaim. Some people may like who's on it. I like the music of that time. It's up to the times, people in certain times. I have no comment beyond that. Some people like it, some people can hate it. Some people, maybe most people, are indifferent to it. Doesn't fit their message. So it's a message thing. Maybe some messages in that people respond to today, like visiting this planet. That's a message in itself. It's not a particular piece. We have a piece entitled that, but it's a message. We are just visiting this planet, meaning that we're here for now, but now is not necessarily forever. Now is momentary. But there's a message there. I think there's a reminder built into that message. Do what you can do to the best degree possible while you have the time to do it. See, we need to take advantage of the moment, to fulfill our purpose. See? That's what we hope to do here.
You've said in the past to give yourself to whatever you're doing, whatever you need to do.
Yeah, it's a figure of speech. Yeah, that's a figure of speech. Give yourself. What's your question?
There seems to be a component of spiritual practice that has to do with the elimination of self, or the transcension of self, and at that point there may not be anything to give.
Well, you want to transcend self that is a problem. You want to enjoy self that is a solution. So you need the solutionary self, right? Not the problem self. Strange language, but we understand what it means. You have to go beyond yourself as a problem. You have to realize yourself as solution. That makes very good sense to people who are practicing and people who are creating. Yeah. So you have to be at peace with the self in order to get certain things done. You can't be in conflict with yourself, and expect to get the best work done that you can do. So the issue here is focus, then, on accomplishment maybe, or realization maybe, that has more to do with the bigger picture of life. What is your universal service? It may require no self, but we say, well, what is your self doing about the universe? Right? Yourself is the universe. The universe is yourself. And then they're just names, so we have to be careful. They're just terms. They're not realities necessarily. They're words. They're part of the message. And the message of the karma or the message of the dharma, which is solutional.
Often, when people talk about karma, they're talking about themselves. And what,
In other words, their karma.
yeah. And
Or what they assume is their karma. It may not be their karma, but they assume it. See, what karma do you assume is true for you? See, that's really the question behind that. See, is there any karma worth assuming is true for you? It's another question. Depends on what stage of practice you're at.
and that karma that seems to just impose itself, to be consistent, to be a persistent force, whether or not that has anything to do with self, it seems like maybe that karma needs to be worked with. Is there a certain point at which the assumption of whether or not it's useful has anything to do with whether or not it needs to be there? And
Well, if it's there, it's there. There's no question about it. What's there is there. You need to know what's there, it's there. And then you need to know what your head is doing to what it is that's there, that you know is really there, in your case or anybody else's case. And what to do with that is relative to who you feel you are and what you feel you're here to do with it. So then it's really about who. Because that karma is there, the so-called karma, whatever that is there for everybody. Everybody is their own karma. So you are your own condition, your own self-created, self-evolved, maybe self-destructive karma. Until you change it, if you recognize it. Say, well, I've been functioning as a self-destructive being, not caring about myself or anybody else, and then all of a sudden, boom, snap, and you start to assume responsibility for what you're creating, what you're being, what you're doing to yourself and or to other beings, whatever that means. See, the perceptions of that is what it means. Not the real meaning of it, but that's what it means. So it appears. And
is that which you described just a second ago, the realization that one needs to take responsibility for karma? Is that karma at a higher level, or is that not karma that realizes that responsibility needs to be taken?
it depends on who. There are some who's who don't have any karma to be concerned about, even though that's the nature of the universe, karma, depending on your view. And then there are those who go beyond karma, say as a thing, as a mechanism, or as a process. They go beyond that. They're not interested in describing anything. They're beyond description. They're beyond intellectual limits and verbalizations. They're beyond that. So then it depends on who. Who is not beyond that? Who is beyond that? And who cares? Nobody gives a hoot.
It's part of the progression. It seems like it does include going from a belief in self and a kind of tight bondage to self through a stage where self is more gossamer, less kind of concrete, intense, and so I was asking the question, well, like, what is this shift?
We're talking about practice. Practice is a series of shifts from tightness to looseness, say from closeness to openness, until it's just done. It's open. You don't really care. You're just open. And of course you can care, but you don't really care. Openness doesn't require that you care about openness. So, openness just is, and when you're there, you understand. And so it becomes an issue of the person defining what self means to them. Is it identification? Is it differentiation? Is it the function of desire, emotionally and psychically? And all these limitations, all of these conditions, all of these specifications there, identify what the self could be to someone. That is self-limitation, self-defining self-limitation. Self-creating self-limitation, or identification, self-image creating self-identification, so on. So then identification becomes a question mark. Who to what? Subject to what object? See? When all of that collapses, and you enter, let's say, we're going to use an old-fashioned term, the void, right? The clear, right? Nothing there. Peace, right? Spirit, say, pure spirit as such. There's nothing that we can call a self as far as that goes. So, there's nothing that you can call a no-self, in fact. There's nothing you can call anything. See? But we do, out of our nature, see, to function in the world, freely, here's the key word, freely associate with the objects and subjects. It's free association in that sense. So no suffering involved in that. No stress necessarily involved in that. Although there are things that arise that are going to be very stressful to the individual, whether you like it or not, whether you try to control it or not. See? Because there are some things relative to the unconscious you cannot sort of control. See? Fear, certain kinds of fear, like bombs going off you. Hard to really be cool and smooth when these things are blowing up in your midst, right? When the forces are so powerful, you know, they put your body into shock. Yeah. So again, the identificational process is crucial, see, for good practice, who you are, what you need to do, and then what you need to not do at the same time, or maybe after what you've done, what you had to do or needed to do, and you need to go beyond that. See? And this becomes very open. So we're talking about doing to infinity and non-doing to infinity. And whatever self-quality you want to give the in-between that sort of process of one or the other, it's up to the individual to define or recreate for themselves. But there is none. Inherently, there is nothing. There is no self. It's just being, basically. We are the truth of being and the life of being and the force of being and the presence of being. Some would say spontaneous being, because it's just happening. Nothing's happening. Can we get to the nothing happening so that we can see what really is happening? Okay. The question was on the condition of the earth, the condition of politics. What we're really talking about is the condition of the earth, and therefore what the condition of the solar system is. We're talking about being used by forces that are either for or against or in stress or ease relative to the solar system. And there are pressures that are created from certain resonances that are also created by the motion of the planets in relation to one another, and most definitely in relationship to the sun. Right? Like the mother, sun. It's just the mother earth, but the mother, father, sun. See? And how that sustains the solar system. And beyond the solar system. How it's in resonance with other suns, beyond the suns that we can see and perceive of, but the suns are in resonance with themselves. See? And we're being burned right now, in a manner of speaking. See? That's the phase it is. It's not just about humans. We're making humans more important than they are, really. Humans are victims and effects of the tensions and stresses of the solar system. Even politics is brought into that. So you have resolutionary politics and you have solutional politics. And that's what we're working towards in the psychic field, is being a solution to ourselves, and that's bringing less tension and stress to other peeps who may not know enough that they have balance in them to handle the circumstances that are arising on the surface of the earth relative to what's inside the earth. So politics is part of the effect of what's going on. And when we're talking about personalities, it's how the personalities in their relative conditions respond to these influences. You can have another personality up there, and they may have a positive response to the stresses and pressures and positive solutions. And then you have someone else maybe less evolved, and you have very, very questionable effects and solutions, if they're even solutionary at all. So what the person brings to the table is their neuroses. So what they can't do as much as what they can do. This is true in politics, this is true in art, this is true at home, this is true everywhere in public. So we're talking about cosmic forces that are also part of this, but we tend to have a very small view, so we think in terms of just personalities. We don't see the bigger picture. We don't see them being used. But everyone here is being used. Not everyone is aware that they're being used or care about the fact that they're being used in a certain way, that they're puppets of the forces of the solar system. And how they feel one day or another day. 1 hour or another hour. So people, humans and societies and civilizations are created. They are best called cultures. They are the effect of, say, some other forces. Say, they are not source. They can be source of confusion, but they're not source itself. See? It's all about the cosmic influence. That's not necessarily helpful, but for some people it makes sense. We often forget we're part of the universe. We're even part of the solar system. We don't see that. We just see ourselves in the mirror. See? And so we see that and we think that's all there is. We believe in that. We make that more than it needs to be made. See? We don't know the forces that are going on inside us necessarily. And we don't stop to think about the forces that are influencing what's going on inside of us.
Certain traditions discuss karma almost exclusively in terms of individuals and individual progression and cycles of rebirth and cause and effect.
Karma is a perception. It's not real beyond that. It's a perception of things as they appear to be. If you can change your vibratory rate to a certain place, then that karma disappears. The conditions actually disappear. In terms of appearances, they disappear. See? And then a good example is that it's like the yogis say you can walk through walls. When we know it's a material wall, you say that doesn't make any sense. But we're not material, so it does make sense. We're spiritual. That does make sense, because that's who we really are. So that part of us is not only walking through walls, it's beyond all walls. All walls. It's wall-less. The truth is wall-less. There's no wall. No real fences. They're assumed. They're projections of our, let's say, limitations and our lack of enlightenment, maybe. Lack of knowing or lack of interest, basically. Lack of interest.
Yeah. And relative to discussion about the world and its conditions and particular world leaders being seemingly in over their heads.
You mean negative effects?
Yeah.
They are effects. All beings are effects of, let's say, what inspires or what they aspire to. But not all are negative necessarily. Not all are personal and egoic. Some are more universal and more selfless and more caring. And that's what you're talking about. Even the quality of caring as in the quality of a lack of caring are all influences. Right? There's some sums of a certain kind of, let's say, conditioning or karma in that sense. Conditions. Right? Karmatic, that's the mechanical conditions. Mechanical tells you that it's the machinery of the universe, hands down. It's not your person. Your person is the effect of your parents and your lineage and your blood and everything else going back to the infinite. See? And it's planetary. So the influence of Mercury over the Earth and Earth over Mars, let's say, and so on and so forth. The interactions here, the interresonances of the planets upon one another as they relate to the sun and their moons in some cases, all variating, right? Creating variables that are beyond quantification, right? Infinite variabilities here. The vibrations are flux passing through all beings and all planets. Living beings that are so subtle, they're not living. They're gone. They're not perceptible. They are imaginable. So the highest plane then is the imaginable. See, in the Dharma, in the great way, the great teachings, it's appropriate to focus on karma and understand what you're made of and what creates you and what creates everything else. So, that is the universe as it is. So, the breathing mechanism of the universe, contraction and expansion of the infinite universes of themselves. So it's well within the realm of intelligence, in fact, to consider karmatic, let's say, processes and effects and sources and Dharma. Understanding it as no big deal, but yet catastrophically significant in terms of the effects of certain processes and certain actions and so on and so forth. So the Dharma is about being conscious of what you're doing, what cause and effect is, so that in the process you create better effects, knowing better. And that implies not being used by your negative emotions, which are basically destructive, oppressive, and obstructive. So they're blockages. Fear, pain, suffering, these are not happiness, expanded happiness or enhancement at the heart level. So to talk about these things is useful to give you some perspective, perhaps a view, could be a bigger view. And then we have to graduate from one view to the next view, let's say in a sequence of views, say up to no view, say the all view, no view, say, silence, ultimate view. Say, yet there's everything to talk about, but then it's from silence, ultimate view. It's much easier to talk about everything and bring more breadth and more depth to it. It's not self-concerned. It's open intelligence. Well, you fall into this hole of wholeness, this clear hole, and you realize that's what you are, basically and fundamentally. You have to deal with that. It's a crisis. The crisis of realization. There's nothing you can do about it, except bear it. Maybe grin or cry, but you have to bear it. Where you know you're nothing at the infinite level. You're the infinite at the nothing level. No thing in particular. And that you have morphed into space-ness. Intelligence, spirit, intelligence. So to be fair, we can say there are two kinds of politics. The politics of enlightenment, happiness, generosity, and the politics of unenlightenment. Selfishness, greed, power-mongering, and all things less than spiritual enlightenment. Whether we see it masked in religious programming, which is aspiring towards enlightenment but not equal to enlightenment in any way, shape, or form. Yeah. Because there's no liberation that is spoken of relative to religion. It's not about liberation. Maybe in the hereafter, but The real is here now, not hereafter. The real is this moment and what condition of life and vibration you're living in this moment. Heartfelt or selfish. Heart open or mind closed completely, radically shut down. Extinct. Right? Right. You're living from extinction, say self-created extinction. Right? Means soul dead practically, and there's no such thing. But many are led to believe, based upon activities that are going on and policies that are being thrown here and thrown there, that there's an extinction issue relative to the nature of soul and what it really is as brilliance and light and peace, illumination. So there's a big question about how that's showing up in this time. Most native people know better, and they aspire towards being better beings. See? Impersonal beings, universal beings, true children of the God, so to speak. See? The heart gods. There you have a description of the potential politics of enlightenment. Caring for all beings. Not this way, but this way. And taking what comes with it. And then it's grace for grace. That usually means taking whatever dangers come with it. Yeah. Come in.
You've said in the past that you got to do what you got to do. The practitioner needs
If
to
you
know.
got to do it.
Yeah.
Right. But then you may have to do what you don't have to do. If you don't have to do it.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
And it seems obvious that the self can also hide in that.
The self is hiding. The self is hiddenness. We don't mean esoteric hiddenness, secret hiddenness. No. The self is hiding from reality, avoiding it. So we're talking about avoiding, not just hiding. Self is avoidance, separation from what is real, what is good, what is truly sacred, and thus universal and equal relative to all beings. We're talking about ultimate equality as part of the enlightenment system. Gotcha. And I may interrupt at times simply to seize the moment to insert maybe something useful to hear in that moment created by your conversation.
So there seems to be a problem with the idea of doing what one needs to do, because.
But then we have to say, who's that a problem for? That sounds very straightforward. If you know what you need to do, you do it.
Yeah.
There shouldn't be a problem about it.
Although when somebody believes that they know what they need to do, it may actually be a self-mechanism, self-limiting, limiting themselves, causing problems for themselves and others.
Could be.
And is that what they need to do?
But who knows? Who knows what they need to do? So you need to believe. That's your freedom of life force and intelligence. You need to believe. But you also need to go beyond believing, but we're pushing the issue on people who are going beyond anything. See, going beyond is for those who go beyond. Not everybody's here to go beyond. Most people are here to taste and try out experience. See? So they're beginners in the universe of experience. Go to school, born to family, raised as a child, and then go beyond that into pubescence, when you grow up. And you're going through your path, let's say unconsciously speaking. You're just evolving in a certain way. And so you have the freedom to do that. That's the freedom of spirit. It's freedom to do what you have to do and learn from it. So if you're free and You want to harm people to find out what that is. That's why people do what they do, to see what the feedback is. And then you learn that you can be put upon to pay the price for what you do, and then you learn not to do it or change up your behavior. So you modify your behavior according to what your behavior brings back to you. Karma, consequence. Karma is consequence. Mm-hmm. So, as you get older, your logic changes, because then for most human beings, they want to know what they can get away with doing. So, they don't really get away with it, but they think they're getting away with it because there's no immediate consequences. Yeah. But if you harm others, it comes back. If you do good to others, it comes back. That means there's no break in the circuitry. So, what the ancients have said, if you do good, you receive good, is probably true. Unless you mix in something else and you cause it not to be as perfect as it could be. So your doubt brings imperfection into any process in any system. Any creative possibility. So we need to give people the freedom to believe or not to believe. That's what liberation is about. Not caring what other people believe or don't believe or should believe. So there can be casual conversation about beliefs, but it shouldn't be concern necessarily. Unless the situation you're confronted with is one of real concern. And by that I mean bringing a very powerful lesson home to you through family or relatives or loved one. Then you may have some concern, because you're party to the benefit or the disadvantage of whatever the karma is. So you're implicated in it. It's your karma. And you want to make sure that whatever karma you're indulging in is good for you and not necessarily bad for you or for anyone else, unless that's what you know you're creating and you're okay with it. Mm-hmm. And in a case like with regard to combat, you know you're in a bad karma situation. You're there to wreak havoc, and havoc is coming out for you. But you put yourself in that in hopes that you do your job and you get home safely. But there's always karma, there's consequence. So then that's what the wisdom of the Dharma is, to know that there's consequence to what you say, what you do, and how you are. Mm-hmm. And then once you're really super aware of it, then you can start to modify it, because what you're seeing is that you're creating effects that could be absolutely wonderful for yourself and others, depending on how you modify what it is you do and how much light you bring into the field for others. Comment. Interference is unlawful. Mm-hmm. And you have to take what comes with interference. It's not always positive. Yeah. So if you interfere, you put your life at risk. You can put someone else at risk if you interfere on a selfish level. If you are appearing to interfere, but you're not interfering, you're in a different kind of cosmic flow, that you're brought into something. There may not be any consequence. You may be brought in as solution. And you may not even be aware of it, but you may be bringing that to the situation selflessly. That's the beauty of the spirit. And you come in, you show up, and everything's all tensions disappear, evaporate. Mm-hmm. Gone. Mm-hmm. So interference is a way of dominating someone, or if it's your children, then you better interfere, because they don't know any better. So interfere when you believe the person doesn't know any better.
Uh-oh.
So,
and what about the question we were just discussing, which is that the person needs to experience what they need to experience. They need to have that experience.
That's pretty much, you live your life. That's the way it goes. You have to live your life and take what comes with your being here. No question about that. That's not a question at all. That just is the way it is. You breathe in, you breathe out, and you've already created your future, and you're walking into it. It's already created. We can say theoretically or hypothetically, it's 80% already created by your actions and your family karma. 80%. And then you have this margin of what you can create to alter that a little bit, and we're given the grace to change. Okay. And that's good for some. Others don't like change, but that's good for them. Change is the universe. So, the change is nature. The dissolution and burn of nature. Transformation of matter into energy. Energy into time, and time into space. Space into mind. So, it's all good. If you're willing to go with that. System, wisdom, understanding, and release from the karma of the material plane or gravity. So if you're bent on interfering, depending on what level of interference we're talking about, you have to accept that it could be a negative result or return. See? If people don't want to be interfered with, you have to be careful. Depends on your calculational abilities. And if you're impulsive, then you're in danger, and maybe other people are also in danger. Because you may be adding fire to a situation that doesn't need any more fire. So you need to cool it down. The idea is if you can interfere and bring healing, no problem. Doctors are supposed to, and medical practitioners, interfere, but they're doing a good job. They're doing their job. So, even when the patient doesn't want to hear about it and they're feeling pain or whatever, and they're fussing, and they want to do you in. Right? When you're doing your kindness as a medical practitioner, right? They protest. Because they're saying, no, I don't want you to touch me. So, you're dying. You don't want to be touched. All right, you want to die? Fine. You have a right to die. But usually they don't give you that privilege. They're going to jump on you and seize you and try to bring you to your senses, and bring you to some healing. Ordinarily, and that's acceptable. Comment on it. Interference.
And
you have more to say about interference. Go ahead.
yeah. And when one is being interfered with, or so it seems. At what point?
It can be very gentle. It can be very kind and gracious. Right? It could be like stroking your hair and telling you something, interfering with you.
Yeah.
So something like that seems to be completely like okay. Or it could be something else. It could be interference that's really out to harm you in a certain way, or the other person. Right? Because then the interference may be from unconsciousness rather than consciousness. Interference could be a reaction, a self-defense program of somebody's. And we're open to all of that. It could be an act of genius for some, or of stupidity. But you can only know by the results. The results are wonderful and great, fantastic, so amazing, astonishing. Maybe genius, right? But if the results are like confusion, toxicity, and like bad vibes, let the results speak for themselves. You have to know what your interference is all about and what it's going to bring back to you, otherwise you're flying blind. So you have to know, not just calculate in your head. You have to know. Your instincts have to be right, and when they're right, you feel great. All right, so one goes or they don't go. They know or they don't know. Depends on how honest the person is. And the truth is a call to action. And action actually is a manifestation of what is true, karmically or not karmically, spiritually. And so the wisdom is woven into every act, every breath, every heartbeat, every brain wave, and so on. Yeah. If you see it, if you know it. If you're out of your head enough to resonate with it, that's it. And if your person who you're with is so out of resonance, you nearly have to use a sledgehammer to get them to do anything. That's not worth it. You know whether. Then there could be coercion on your part, or anybody's part. See? You have to have compassion. You need to let that go. See? If you can. If we're talking about saving somebody in a pool of water, then you better go into action and be as violent as you need to in order to try to save the person if that's your intention. So whatever method you need to use, feel good about what that method is. Because I think the real point is saving the person, if you can. And then you leave them to themselves. You pull them out of the water and you put them on the beach. You have your life back. You owe me nothing, but you have your life back. I've had to do that. In other words, there's no thank yous involved. Don't wait for thank yous or gratitude. You have to be in the grace and thus selfless about what you have to do to whomever it is. Come in. In every case, the individual has to take what comes with their actions, their choices, decisions. That's the law. It's a karmic law. And how that is judged by other people, it's relative to karmic law concerning themselves. So you have to choose to save or not save the other person, or share or not share. See? And you have to take what comes with it. It could be this, that, or somewhere in between. In other words, you have to come from the heart of no emotion, which is like impossible. Everybody comes from a passionate kind of place. Everybody's turned on or turned off and so on. You have to come from a neutral place. If you can get there, that's what good practice is about. So you're clear enough to know what you need to do without having regrets, without consequence, even if it's painful or dark in nature, depending on what it is. There's no consequence when it's from the right place. It's not about consequence. It's not about effect either. See? So we're talking about bodhisattvas. They can do things like from a different level completely. And it's all good. Because all they represent is goodness. Who is able to do that?